Hi everyone, I'm Joanna.
And I'm Jenny.
And this is Hyphenated, the podcast about living in the hyphen. How are you, Jenny?
I'm doing great. It's really nice sitting here on the hyphen. It's this little space. It's very cozy.
Very cozy between more than one word. Mm-hmm. You know, what I love about hyphens is that you can just continue to hyphen. And like, I don't know, my mom wants me to hyphen all my last names so that all of my grandparents are represented. I'm like, all right, Joanna Hausman, Hatar Goldfarb, Alonso Kern Dotti. It's like, it's a little too long, too many hyphens, Mom.
I mean, kudos to you for knowing all of that. My mom didn't even give me a middle name. She's like, screw it. Jennifer Lorenzo.
Oh, I love that. That's so clean. And, you know, speaking of names, Jenny, yeah. I don't know if you know this. My last name, my last names, like my dad's last name is Hausman. Mm-hmm. My mom's last name is Jatar. Jatar is Lebanese Christian, wow. Right? And then Hausman is Ashkenazi Jewish. So every time I talk to anyone and I say my name is Joanna Hausman, they are in shock when they find out I'm from Venezuela, that I'm Latin. And it's always so weird to me because I know so many Jewish Latinos, I mean, because they're all my family, but it's always quite like, it's always not shocking, I guess, because the great majority of Latin America is obviously default Catholic. Like Catholicism is almost like ingrained in our culture. Yeah. I'm Jewish, but I for sure celebrated Semana Santa. Like Navidad was lit. Like
I'm sure.
I know like all of the lore of the ¿cómo se dice? Los Reyes Magos. Like, you know, well, partly because my mom is Christian as well. I'm a hyphen in religion as well. But like religion being so linked to like identity for Latinos is kind of mind-boggling to me. When you see a Latin character in a TV show, especially, it's always like, el rosario, like the candles, the this, and like that is so accurate because my Cuban grandma was 100% that.
Oh yeah,
100%. But it's you know, people are so blatantly unaware that there is other religious culture in Latin America. I mean, I don't know if you know this, Jenny, but Jews have been going to Latin America since like straight up like Inquisition times. They were like, oh, Queen Isabel's crazy. She's kind of murdering us. Let's get out of here, you know? And then in the 20th century, we saw, which is when my Jewish family arrived to Venezuela, it was like Ashkenazi Jews escaping the war. And so many ended up in Argentina, in Mexico, in Guyana.
Hasta in Cuba. There was a Jewish community in Cuba. I mean, my Jewish Cuban friends lovingly call themselves Jubans.
Jubans. I mean, there were a lot. And it's really interesting when people are shocked to hear that there's Latin Jews. I'm always like, did you think Jewish people just like grew in New York? They were like, just you could plop them out of a tree? Like they came from somewhere to the Americas. Why did you think they're only in the States? And so many times people are like, you're not Latin, you're Jewish. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I couldn't be Jewish and Venezuelan, considering one is a religion / ethnicity and another one is a country, a nationality.
Gatekeeping.
Like no one says Jerry Seinfeld isn't American because he's Jewish. No one says that.
I know.
Who would say that? Seth Rogen, he's not American, he's Jewish. No one would say that. Of course they're American. So then why do people say you can't be Latino, you're Jewish? It's like, Ashley, shut up.
Ashley.
But like, so I know a lot about Catholicism. And then when I moved to the States, I didn't realize Catholicism was a minority here. Like people are like, oh my God, Kennedy, the Catholic president. And I'm like, aren't all presidents Catholic? And they're like, no, dude, this is like a Christian country.
Yeah, Christian.
And I was like, wait, what? The hell? And I don't even know there was like multiple Protestant churches. I'm just, it was shocking to me. So you grew up, you were raised Catholic.
Yes. So this is where my childhood upbringing became really confusing. Yes, I was raised Catholic. My grandparents on both sides, my parents, all Catholic, got married in the Catholic Church, baptized, First Communion, catechism. I love that word. CCD is what we would call it. And I did confirmation y todo. But while I was doing that whole thing, I was enrolled in a small Christian private school. And yes, we all worshiped the same God, but they were very much anti-Catholic. My mom used to be very involved in my school, and she would be like the room mom and take us on field trips. And she told me that one time the secretary, got in the car with her and freaked out when she saw her rosary hanging.
Oh, from the
rear view.
Because there's nothing more Latino than a rosary hanging from a rear view mirror. Like my Jewish family.
There's always like little Angelito de la Guardia, like prayer cards, like blessing the car, holy water, like all of that, like holy water, any kind of object that like Catholics really hold on, the candles, that is all a big no-no.
It's so crazy how we sort of tend to reject those that we at least are able to see ourselves in a bit. Oh my God, do you hear that? Is that God? One of the crazy things that's happening right now to a lot of my Venezuelan friends, very Catholic Venezuelan friends, is that they're applying to the Spanish passport. And the way that they're doing this, Jenny, is through like hiring a como que genealogist, people that sort of reconstruct your family tree to prove they're actually Sephardic Jews that were sort of super kicked out during the Inquisition. So these super Catholic people are now like saying, dude, I'm actually surprised. I'm Jewish. And that's how I'm getting out of Venezuela. I'm going to Spain. It's because I'm Jewish.
Oh my
I'm like,
goodness.
What are you talking about? What? But like, and these are the same people. And a lot of my friends from Venezuela had these prejudices against Jewish people that I very much care about, people that like, I understand that they just did not have enough context to understand what Jewish people were, because there was only like 20,000 of us in Caracas. And in Venezuela, Jewish people did not assimilate the way that they assimilated in the States. Jewish people sort of had their own school. We have our own country club. Like Jewish people sort of remained in their little shtetl, actually. And when my dad actually married my mom, who was a non-Jew, it was like a big deal. Like his family was not happy. I was perceived to be not Jewish enough for the school, which is sort of this inner identity crisis I felt as well, because I felt very identified I know I'm an atheist, but I felt very identified with the cultural elements of my Jewish side, and then I was simultaneously rejected. So I understood why so many of my Catholic friends had these perceptions of Judaism as this like weird and off, and like they're off doing their stuff in the corner and they're like mysterious. And like Hugo Chavez literally sent soldiers to the Jewish school to see if there were bombs there. Like Jewish people were perceived as different. Gosh. Even if, my dad was a minister in Venezuela, he was Jewish. We were part of culture, but we were also simultaneously not. And here, being Jewish is like so fun because, there's still anti-Semitism, but Judaism is kind of like, oh, you're just funny and have frizzy hair. And back there, it's like, is it your religion? And I'm curious to hear you, like, is Catholicism part of your culture or is it your religion?
Oof. I've gone through a journey. I did the Catholic stuff for my mom. And then in a lot of my videos, I do involve Catholicism because that is what a lot of my audience relates to the most. Mainly, even if you yourself aren't Catholic, your grandparents were surely more than likely Catholic or at least very religious.
I just think that a lot of Latin culture is inherently Catholic. Like the parades I'd see in Caracas, like, you know, with the Jesus and the this and the crown and it wasn't even like, I didn't see it as like, oh, that's a religion. Like, I'd be like, oh yeah, it's this day. Like it was just part of Semana Santa. Here it's spring break, and then in Venezuela it's Saint Week. The week you go and get drunk on the beach. And I don't know why it's saintly, but...
And don't act saintly at all.
It's so interesting. Like, religion and spirituality are kind of, for me, like a little bit separate. Like, I identify as Jewish, but there's no one more atheist than my Jewish family. Like, my grandfather, he survived the Holocaust, man. So did my grandma. And they're just like, dude, honestly, tried to like pray to God. It didn't go well. We don't know what exists, but we really want you to adhere to traditions. Traditions are part of our culture. And I think that I see that in Catholicism in Latin America. And here in this country, I think that there's just, in the States, there's just more of a diversity of religions. And even within Christianity, there's just so many subsects that I don't understand.
Yeah.
It's so bizarre, but I felt super Jewish doing my bat mitzvah in Cambridge, Massachusetts with like we have also different denominations. Like we have Reform, we have Conservative, and we have Orthodox. And I'm Reform. Like women can be rabbis. Some like it's just relaxed, I guess. It's more modern, and I felt really, really Jewish in that sense, because it was more about philosophy, it was more about culture, it was more about tradition. In my bat mitzvah, I had a guy with long hair play a guitar. You know, I had my non-Jewish family say a prayer, but like it wasn't even a prayer to God, it was a prayer to like kindness and whatever. So I felt really Jewish, and then I moved back to Venezuela right after my bat mitzvah, and in Venezuela. Most people are either conservative or Orthodox. I remember going to a synagogue in Caracas for the first time, and I was used to going with my dad and sitting next to my dad, and my dad teaching me like kind of what was being said. We would follow the Hebrew, etc. And then he was like, you have to go upstairs because women sit upstairs. Men sit where the Torah is. Women sit upstairs.
Oh my gosh.
And that was the moment for me that I was like, that's going to be a no for me, dog. Like, this is not for me. This is, I mean, I respect it, but if this is what I have to adhere to, I don't feel represented in this. I feel represented in this version of my religion because I feel more culturally attached to that. And it was weird. And speaking about being in a hyphen, like, yes, I'm Jewish, but to most Jews, I'm not Jewish. You know what I mean?
I would say the same thing about myself. Like, there's some Catholic traditions that I think are beautiful, and I love having my rosary. But I don't think, due to my progressive views and stuff, I would be even considered Christian by most Christians, right? So, I feel you on that.
It feels like the same way, people tell me what a Latina is and what it isn't. I see it very reflected in the Jewish side of my identity as well. And it's also like literally in my name. It's like my last name is so Jewish. You know what I mean? The same way my accent is super Spanish, like my last name is super Jewish. And it's spelled German, but my grandfather is like, we're not German. We literally got kicked out in Kristallnacht. Like, after being orphaned, I walked for 2 years to Spain to escape Germany.
Oh my
So like, we're not
gosh.
German, dude. So, my grandfather always says, like, the only passport he ever had was Venezuelan. That's it.
Wow.
And this guy, él habla español así. Él habla español como alemán. That's how he speaks Spanish. And for him, he came to Venezuela. He never spoke like a Venezuelan. He loves Venezuela. He always felt linked to Venezuela, but he was always an immigrant. He always sounded different. He always looked different. So what was his identity? He was an atheist, but his identity was being a Jew. He was like, my identity, first and foremost, is Jewish. And then I'm Venezuelan. And that's something that I never felt. I felt more Venezuelan than Jewish. But seeing him, someone who did not believe in God, feel so attached to that as his prime identity was always something that stuck with me, as religion isn't just a set of ideals. It can be sort of a compass for who you feel you are. One of my favorite things about Miami is that there's a lot of Venezuelan Jews in Miami. They were the first people to leave Venezuela when things were going down in flames. They were like, we've seen this before. We're out.
And I think the same thing happened with the Cuban Jewish community.
Yeah. And some of my favorite restaurants in Miami are kosher Venezuelan restaurants.
Wow.
It's this weird amalgam of Jewish people that feel super Venezuelan. And they're like, I need to be able to have an arepa that was praised by a rabbi so I could eat it. So it's like, it isn't one thing or another. Do you know what I mean?
Claro, like, yeah.
And that sort of gave me peace. Because for a long time I was like, is it? And it isn't. There's freaking kosher pabellon, dude. That is like, hell yeah, man. But wait, so Jenny, you have like traditions in your house, like Catholic traditions in your house and whatever. Mm-hmm. But have you ever had like a situation where you see something you thought was Catholic, but then it turns out it's not Catholic at all? It's just like weird mal de ojo stuff, or...
Oh man, that's what also confused me quite a lot as a child. So you've got like a lot of Caribbean, and in my experience, Cuban people in your family and in your life who are these devout Catholics, all right? Because you've got like your passive Catholics that just show up on Sunday and do their, get the communion and then go back to their, I don't know if I can say this, but puteria. So then, it's fine. They just go back to whatever, they want to do, and they're not super religious, but they still go to mass. But then there's the devout Catholics. And what I find really funny is that they're like, we're so Catholic, we're by the book Catholic. And this includes some of my family members, right? And then I'm like, okay, you're so Catholic, but why do you have a glass of water in the freezer with Martika's name in it?
Wait, what is that?
It's like a way to ward off people you don't want in your life. It is brujeria. That is a form of brujeria, like putting a broom upside down by the door or hanging bread over the doorway. Like there's so many little things. Even like I grew up as a baby, and I still have it. It's called an azabache, and it's this black stone, and you would pin it inside the clothing of babies, and it would ward off the evil eye. Last I checked, none of this is in the Bible. Well, here's what's even more interesting. A lot of Catholics reject brujeria. They think it's evil. They think you're gonna go to hell. Mm-hmm. But then I'm like, but you guys are kind of hypocritical because...
Oh my gosh. Wait.
Cuando, tú sabes, when it suits them, they're like, I don't like that girl. I don't like her for my Pepito, so I'm gonna put a glass of water in the freezer with her name in it. Oh, but I'm not a bruja. Like, God forbid, though, you call them brujas.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They're like, no, yo no soy bruja. Yo no soy bruja. So I'm like, what is it, bro?
My Catholic Jewish grandma, she was like, she would be afraid of any other like weird brujeria. Like when chicken heads were found in the park near her apartment, she'd be like, la bruja are out, whatever. But then like when it was raining, she'd put a knife outside to make it stop.
Okay, what is that? Where in the book of Matthew do we see this knife business?
But I love it because it's so in like it the Catholic, like Latin Catholicism has been so immersed with these other sort of spiritual identifiers. Like, a lot of this came from, I think, like African slaves, and then native, like the way that native folk Taino, all that merged. And so these super Catholic people are also like, I don't know, I think we should put garlic in a shoe. The other day, I was waiting to hear about a big job, and my friend was like, okay, I wrote a letter to a saint, so I just need you to open your door to let it in. And I was like, oh my God, girl, what? She was like, just listen to me. You open the door, the saint will come in. I'm like,
oh my God, that reminds me. That reminds me of, oh my God. Okay, so remember when Jesus, were you there?
I wasn't there. I don't remember when Jesus did anything.
I'm like, remember when? So when Jesus was crucified, one of the people that was crucified next to Jesus was a penitent thief named San Dismas. He was the one that asked Jesus for forgiveness before he passed on the cross next to Jesus. Like, he was
Jenny, I'm Jewish. I know nothing about Jesus. I don't know what you're saying.
I don't even know why I'm acting like you know,
remember
right?
The story like of Jesus. Of Jesus? No, I don't.
No, okay. So yeah, so he was like really like repenting to Jesus, and Jesus forgave him while they were both hung on their crosses. And so he ultimately goes down in history as a good guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so in my household, whenever we would lose something,
mm-hmm.
and it was like, yo, I've looked everywhere, and I cannot find this crayon de labio to save my life. And we'd be like, tenemos que amarrar sandisma. And so we would grab I don't know why we did yellow, but it was like a yellow string or any string. And we would tie it around like a table leg or something. And we would say, Sandima, Sandima, si yo no encuentro my blank, I'm not going to let you go. It's almost like you're incarcerating him again, like you're putting him back in jail. And I always thought that was a Catholic thing. So when my friends, my American friends, like my non-Latino American friends, would lose something, I'd be like, Jessie, we need to tie up Sandima. And she'd be like, what? What are you talking about? And they would fucking go along with it because they're like, screw it, I'm desperate. But you know what's even freakier is that every time we would tie up Sandima, we would find it.
Oh my God. My Jewish Colombian roommate, when she wouldn't find something, she'd flip a cup upside down.
Oh.
And I think that comes from like brujeria stuff too.
Of course. and la limpieza, the egg, passing el huevo, like, there's so much there. And I'm like, y'all, this isn't taught in Catholicism.
It is not
Can
taught.
we just accept that you are practicing a little brujeria and call it a day?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I went to New Orleans, and
Mm-hmm.
I love New Orleans, and there were elements of the culture that reminded me of like stuff we did in Venezuela.
Because of Catholicism.
Well, but also because of the Creole cult, like the
Oh yeah,
the,
yeah.
Como que
Oh yeah,
the voodoo, the
Sí.
that's just like the cup in the fridge, dude. It's the same
100%.
thing. It's
100%.
the same thing. But if I took my grandma to that, she'd be like, "Ay Dios santo, esto bro," and then she'd like go do something almost the same.
That's what I find so funny. I'm like, abuela, this is brujeria. Tú me hiciste brujeria. Remember that song?
I love that song.
It's so good, but it's so true. Like my whole life, and it is a little traumatic as a kid to constantly, like, till this day, I won't put a hat on the bed because I think it's gonna bring doctors and illness.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of superstition involved in the brujeria too. So it's like, if you do this, then you can't do that, and I always felt like restrained, like scared to live life because I always felt like someone was going to curse me.
Oh my God. Well, speaking of cursing, Jenny, this
Yeah.
is the part of the podcast where we talk about a saying or a word that we love, but also didn't understand for the longest time. So me and you were talking about the saying, me cago en 10. I shit on the number 10. And why am I mentioning this on our religion episode, Jenny? Why is I shit on a number, a saying that all of us have heard a million times? Why?
I don't know what it is about getting older that you then finally start to dig into Google to figure out why things are the way they are, because that was my abuelo's favorite phrase. Next to alabao, which is also has origins in religion, but was me cago en 10. He would say it just like that. Like he would stub his toe, or something bad would happen, even if it was silly. He'd be like, me cago en 10. And as a kid, I'm like, why are we shitting on 10? Does it mean we're shitting in 10 minutes? Is there something? And I just kept putting so much focus on 10. But then later we came to find out that it's just a nice way of saying, I shit on God. Me cago en Dios.
Instead of saying Dios, you say diez.
Yes.
Which is funny because you're still saying the bad word, which is shit.
Me cago.
Instead of saying me lloro en Dios or something, you changed the God word and you kept the shit word.
Okay, we love to be... I'll tell you this. I learned the hard way, but also the hilarious way that Caribbean people, obviously including Venezuelans, we're a little more... I don't know what the word is right now, but...
Dramatic?
Not dramatic, but like my husband's half Peruvian, half Puerto Rican, and the Peruvian side is a lot more conservative. Like, they would never say cago, but like Caribbean people love saying caca and me cago.
Like, Venezuelans always say verga. And like, it is perceived as like,
vulgar.
I was just in Mexico and I was like, verga. And my mother-in-law was like, do not say that here. Don't say that. That is really bad. And I'm like, verga, pero ¿por qué coño? And she's like, that's even worse. Please stop. Please shut the fuck up.
That's what I mean. We're more vulgar. We're more vulgar people.
We're so vulgar. Coño,
and look, obviously that doesn't apply to everyone. Yeah, I know a good fair share of Coral Gables Cubans who would never dare agree with me, and they'd be like, I don't say those things. Okay, Gloria.
Dude,
pero...
carajo, I didn't know this. Carajo. I'm like, I was with my brother-in-law. He's like, just try not to curse, please. And I'm like, okay, bueno, ese carajo. And he's like, carajo means penis. You
okay,
but
carajo also means the top of a ship, and Miami had a restaurant called El Carajo.
Wait,
with
are you serious?
It's a part of a ship.
Does it look like a penis?
No, not really. I don't know.
I mean, everything kind of looks like a penis, I guess.
So its origin is kind of innocent. Other than me cago en die, there's like me cago en tu puta madre, me cago en tu madre. That was a big one.
I love when Spaniards say me cago en tus muertos. I shit on your dead ancestors.
That's the
because that is
brutal.
That's just brutal. English has like fuck you, and then Spain is like I will go into ancestry.com, find out where your ancestors are buried, and I'm gonna take a shit on their grave. That is
it's so much more brutal. But you want to know what's fucking weird is that there was like. I learned to stop using like English curse words in my videos because my Latino audience would get really upset. They're like, I cannot believe you're using the F word. But then I could say carajo, coño. They don't care.
No.
They'll gladly watch videos with their children and I could be saying coño, carajo. They don't care.
No, they don't care.
But then I say fuck and they're like,
they're like, esa palabra es muy fea, muy
I'm
fea.
like, it's just a 4-letter word that's not really that intense.
Esa palabra no se dice, pero coño de la madre. Pussy of
you
the
know
mother. That's fine.
Did your mom ever scream at you and say me cago en tu madre and then you become a smartass and you're like, so you're shitting on yourself?
No, every time my mom would call me a malcriada, I'd be like, that sounds like a you problem. If I was ill-raised, which is what that word means. So,
isn't that funny? That's so funny to me.
I love that you mentioned my mom because my mom literally just called me and I have to call her back. She's called me 4 times during this recording.
I cannot.
I'm going to say goodbye in the most Latin way possible. And I'm going to ask you for bendición. So, bendición, abuelita.
Que Dios te bendiga y que te ampare.
Oh, God, that flashback. All right, everyone, don't forget to subscribe and take care of yourself.